Hello, everyone. My name is Shane A. Bassett, the movie analyst, and today's guest is coming at you all the way over from Europe. I don't know where exactly. I'll have to ask. Hello, Neil. Neil Linpow.
Hi, how you doing, Shane?
Yeah, mate, I'm doing well, and we've had a chat on and off for a while now. I've seen your movie quite some time ago when it was
Right.
released overseas, but now it's getting a release down under. So you must be pretty excited about that. You wrote and you star in No Exit, which has a bit of an identity crisis. It was
Right.
called Little Bone Lodge, of course, when released in the UK.
Yeah. I mean, so it's I'm sort of getting my head around No Exit, or Last Exit. I think is it No Exit? Is it Last Exit? Yeah, it's something like that. I mean, it's a
Last
basically,
Exit, actually. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
not
yeah,
No Exit.
yeah. Well, it's funny because it's always been, to me, it's called Little Bone Lodge, and it's been called that since the very beginning. It's funny because when I was writing it, I mean, to be perfectly honest, I couldn't care what anybody calls it as long as they don't call it shit. Can I say that? Is that can I
Yeah.
um apologies. But yeah, so I don't really care what they call it. But the director of the film, Matthias Honer, he sort of said to me really early on when I was developing the idea up and chatting with him about it, he said, "What's it called?" And I said, "I don't care. What do you want to call it?" But he was it kind of opened my eyes, educated me a little bit to the idea of, when a distributor or a production company or a financier is looking at a project, they want to think, what does the thumbnail look like? What does the poster look like? How do we discuss this film visually? And the title is always something that's very important to them. So we had kicked around a bunch of titles, and Little Bone Lodge was the one that was always on the script from page one, or from draft one, sorry, and had been the case all the way through production and into post production, and is that way everywhere else in the world, barring the USA or North America and Australia. And I think the distributors in the US, they felt that the film, they wanted to kind of steer it, their release, in more as it more of a kind of a mystery thriller, as opposed to like a psychological thriller sort of horror,
Yeah.
as it's been marketed elsewhere. So they were very helpful. They got on a call with us and they said, "Look, we want to change the title from Little Bone Lodge. We've got some ideas," which they pitched to us and asked us if we had any ideas. And I quite like the idea of calling the film No Place Like Home, because
Yeah, that
it
sounds
has
good.
double meaning. Yeah, especially when you've seen the film and you kind of get the sense that this is, has a double meaning there. But they didn't go for that, and I had another idea, which was Last Exit to Nowhere, which I thought was quite cool. And I guess it just stuck with Last Exit, and then that was offered around, I suppose, to some of the other territories that picked up the film to buy it, including Australia. So yeah, it was only when you reached out to me that I realized it was called that there. So I was like, okay, cool.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
it baffled me as well. That's probably why I got it mixed up because
yeah,
I just know it so well as Little Bone Lodge. And when I
yeah,
reviewed it for the People's Movies over in the UK, I loved it. I
yeah.
really did. And
Oh,
I
thanks, mate.
did you have a design, have any idea of designs for the poster as well? Because that is, you're talking about thumbnails. That's really striking. But there's a
Yeah,
couple of different versions of that as well.
yeah, I mean, the main poster, Matthias, to his credit, he's a very visual. Well,
Yeah.
he studied graphic design, I believe, or art. He comes from an art background, anyhow. So he was really hands on in trying to put together some mock-ups, and they basically took some of his ideas and ran with them, and then he kind of gave him another pass over. So that was him. That's his DNA is all over the artwork for it. So yeah, I think it looks cool. It's kind of it's quite a striking image.
Yeah, I love them. Well, I've seen two in particular ones I like.
Yeah,
I think I like the house hanging from the chain as
yeah,
my favorite. Posters to me are really important. But how
right.
did the combination of you and Mateus, like, that works? Do you think you'd work again
Yeah,
together? And how are you
I think
friends
so.
from the beginning?
I mean, absolutely. It's interesting because, just to give it some context, like I had sort of stepped away from being an actor and was writing,
Right.
primarily working in commercials as an exec producer for commercials production companies. And I had got to work with some amazing directors, Oscar winning directors.
Yeah.
uh, sort of their kind of exec producer on all of their advertising commercial work, but never really anything, any film or TV stuff. But I was working with these amazing people and sort of gleaning so much information from them, but also kind of realizing that I wasn't creating anything myself anymore, and I was sort of servicing other people's creativity.
Yeah.
Made a couple of just off my own steam. I made a couple of short films, which were really to scratch an itch because I didn't want to get to this place where I sort of turned around and thought, well, my career has passed me by, because I put it on pause to sort of make some money, and because I got tired of sort of being offered acting jobs I didn't want to do, and if you say no to a bunch of things, then the opportunities actually really they dry up.
That's exactly
Um,
right.
yeah. So my sort of side hustle turned into my kind of lucrative career. And I was like, you need to make a choice now. You need to do something about it, or this is gonna be it. So I made this sort of very, very small short film that one of my really close friends who was a camera operator and focus puller on quite a lot of big film and TV shows, but had wanted to light and shoot his own feature films and was getting frustrated that he hadn't made the jump either. We were
Right.
sitting in a pub one day, and what had happened was a couple of other friends had written a feature film which was in pre-production, and they had written a part. One of the guys had written a part in there that he had kind of intended for me, and I couldn't get a meeting for it. Like the casting director sort of said, "Oh no, no, we need someone with more value than this."
Mm.
I couldn't even get in the room for a part that was written for me, and I just, I was like, it's just so typical. So I was sitting outside the pub with my friend Joe, and we were like, we've got to do something about this. So he was like, "Well, why don't you make a casting tape, and send it in? So at least they'll see you." And the traditional sort of casting tape is you at home in front of a white, not too dissimilar to this, and you sort of tape the scenes and stuff. And I was like, that's just not going to cut through. And he was like, well, look, I want to shoot stuff. So he had a really good relationship with a lot of the camera rental places, and we went and we got some stuff. And I wrote a monologue the night before, and we shot this little 3-minute short film.
Okay.
And I used it as a casting tape. That film actually got put into turnaround, and it never got made. But I had this 3.5 minute long short film, which is basically just me sort of doing my acting. And we didn't really know what to do with it. So we thought, well, we'll just put it into some film festivals. And we put it in, and it did really, really well in the UK. And it got won some awards at some big festivals and got onto some sort of like, in the advertising world, there's a lot of like the trade mags that picked it up and kind of
Yep.
talked about it. And Matthias was a director who was had made a couple of feature films that had been successful, but was knew me primarily through the commercial world as an EP.
Sure.
And he reached out to me after having seen that short film, and then I made another short film. He reached out to me after that and was like, "Look, both of your short films are contained into one location, and they're sort of they've got a genre twist on them." And we had just entered lockdown at that point, and he was like, "I think when we come out of COVID, people are going to want to make these small contained films that you can shoot in sort of 20 to 30 days
Smart.
for
Yeah.
next to no money, that are going to be quote unquote sort of COVID friendly." And he had a relationship with this production company in the UK called T Shop. And they had a route to some financing if the films could be made at a fair budget.
Okay.
So and when I say fair budget, I mean we made this film on like buttons and lint. It was like, I mean, the, it wouldn't cover the catering budget of like your traditional sort of
Yeah.
TV show. Um, but he asked me if I had any ideas, and I sort of put together a couple of thoughts, and one of them was the genesis of Little Bone Lodge. Um, he liked that, and I wrote a treatment for it, and we put that to this production company, who then took it to some financiers, and they said, "Okay, well, look, let's see a script." And so it was
Mm.
all done on spec. At this point, it was sort of a bit of carrot dangling. It was like, go and write something then. And Matthias and I got on really well through that process, and I really enjoyed the back and forth with him. And then we made the film, and I think that inevitably, whenever you make something with somebody else and everybody, including, cast and whatever, you're inviting everybody else's creativity into the film.
Yeah.
So it's always going to end up being steered slightly away from what might have been the vision in your head, but
Yeah.
it's going on a collaborative journey with people, and it's whether or not you enjoy that process or not. And, I think Matthias and I both took enough from it to feel that like there was a good working relationship there. And I think we're most certain we still socialize, we still talk a lot, and we're still looking at things like what else can we do that is the right
Good.
project for us. we have different sensibilities. He likes sort of different. His tastes are sometimes different to mine, but because I think the films that he had made before were like, he made a big, broad horror comedy film, and he made a big sort of action film set in like feudal Japan, and
Very
with
different to what you guys did.
totally different. So my sensibilities kind of lie more in that sort of Blue Ruin kind of
Yeah.
world, and I think we're trying to find other things that can kind of do a bit of both. So when the right thing comes along, I'm sure we'll be all over it. I realized that just took me about 15 minutes to answer your question.
Mate, no, no, mate, that's all right. But what you're telling me is that Little Bone Lodge really started at the pub, like a lot of good things do.
Oh, 100%, mate. Yeah. I mean, this is it. It's, there was certainly nobody out there chomping at the bit to get us to go and make something.
Yeah.
It was just hustle. We wanted to make something. I mean, for me, as I say, I was at a place in my life where I felt like if I don't make this happen now,
Yeah.
it's not going to happen. And there was that saying that went around in my head, which is, it's better to have been a never was than a might have been. So I'd rather make something and it just not work than sit there in 10 years' time and go like, yeah, I probably should have had a bit of a, more of a crack at it than I did. So um yeah, it's
Well,
out
here
there now.
you are talking to me, and your movie's getting
Yeah.
released, in another hemisphere. So that's
Yeah,
an
yeah, it's
achievement.
amazing. Yeah. I mean, it's odd because you do have to sort of take a step back at times and look at it and think, well, you know, it's for such a small film, it's kind of surpassed what we were, with all the things that we could have hoped for it.
Mm,
We've had a really positive reception to the film, and now it's been sold in North America, in Australia, and so many territories. I think it's been sold pretty much everywhere, and
good.
the feedback seems to always be positive. So yeah, I mean, it's
And
astonishing.
another bonus is Defiant Entertainment, who release movies down under, releasing your film, also release a lot of their titles on physical media. And that's a
Right.
bonus because, the
Yeah.
people like me still buy physical media. It is still a
Yeah, yeah,
thing.
yeah.
It's hanging in there.
Well, you know what? It's so funny. So when we were released in the UK, initially we went out on VOD and we didn't have a physical release, but the film performed so well over here that they've now
Mm,
released a Blu-ray, which came out last week, and
okay.
we recorded a commentary for it, and we've done some interviews, and so it's quite. I don't know what the DVD's like in Australia, but the Blu-ray that you can get in the UK is sort of stacked full of extras and stuff as well. So it was really nice because there was a minute where I was thinking, you make films because you want them to live on,
Yeah.
and you see so often now that these films, if they don't have a physical release, they could be gone in 10-15 years time. They're
Yeah.
gone. They get taken to platforms and you'll never see them again. And that kind of made me feel a little sad that the potential of having put all this sort of time and effort and thought into a film that might not be able to be seen in a decade was sad. So I'm thank you to Define, and thanks to Signature for releasing the Blu-ray in the UK as well.
Yeah, well, I'll have to get on the signature because unfortunately there's no extras on our version.
Oh,
So I'll be getting one from the UK's to put in my
yeah,
collection.
yeah. Well, if they don't, let me know and I'll send you one.
Thank you very much, Neil. I might just do that.
Yeah, no
Now,
problem.
I'll get to your acting shortly, but when you're
Cool.
writing the movie, how long? I mean, this is a pretty intense, I guess you could say, and movie that goes in more directions than you expect.
Right, yeah.
How long did you have this in you? Was it a story that came up out of the blue, or did you just think, okay, I'm going to build on this story of two criminals, knocking at someone's door in the middle of the night? Because it really goes somewhere I wasn't expecting.
Oh, good, good. I'm glad that it sort of keeps you on your toes. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a really good question, but it's also not one that I've sort of thought too much about because
Mm.
like I the films that I always loved growing up were the films that have misdirection, or that you don't sort of, you have to kind of work out as they go along.
Yeah.
Like early David Fincher films, things like The Game. It's just such an incredible
Great movie.
twist. Yeah. You I always loved contained films as well, because I always felt that if you set a film in one or two locations with minimal characters, classic example might be like Reservoir Dogs. You know, you've got misdirection within the story in there, but you've also you really have to make the tension come through the characterization.
Mm,
And that means that you have to write these well developed and three-dimensional people and then put them in a situation which kind of is going to play on their um anxieties and their weaknesses, you know.
yeah,
And I I guess around the same time during lockdown, like everybody, there was a lot of Netflix being watched and a lot of true crime documentaries. And I was kind of, you know, I was curious as to how you might frame a story around a missing persons case from like 10, 15 years before. You know, what was in
true.
the UK. In the UK, there was a very famous missing person, a young girl that went missing, you know, when I was growing up, and every now and then they still talk about like, you know, where is she? What if she was found? You know,
Right.
and I kind of I guess I had that in the back of my mind would be like, what if you just came across randomly this like this person who'd been missing for 15 years, and that then kind of blew the you know the lid off of like this long running mystery. And then how do you what sort of characters can you put in to discover that, and then how can
Mm,
they have their own baggage and their own problem as well? So I wanted to sort of create a story where you had basically what you think is going to be the primary narrative just
yep.
really not actually be that important, and these two characters walking into something that was sort of way deeper and more convoluted than you or they or the audience would have expected. So I
Yeah,
think
I'll say.
once yeah, yeah. So once I started, once Matthias had said, these are the parameters, we need to set a film that's set in like one location with one actor, basically, which is like my short films. It's like, what can you come up with? Oh, okay. And then just sort of expanded into two, three, four characters. And you know, we sit with a low cast count,
Right.
primarily it's sort of, you know, four central characters with some other very important supporting roles that pop up, you know.
Yeah,
Um
well, as good as acting you are in basically the semi or co-lead, it's the girls who
yeah.
honestly take the cake in this movie. The casting is terrific. Did you have a say in it with Matthias, or was it done with an outside booking agent?
Well, we had a casting director, but the thing is, as I say, like credit to Matthias, this is very much a collaborative process. You know,
Right.
he included me in so many more things than traditionally you'd expect a writer to be included in.
Great.
You know, he would send me edits as they were, you know, when they were in post production. You know, he was obviously he's going to pick and choose what he chooses to listen to of my thoughts or notes. But the fact that you know that it felt always that we were a team on the film was, you know, was important, and that was through the casting too. You know, like when I was writing the film, you know, there was a list of actors in my head that I was like, okay, these are the sort of people that fit the bill for Mama, you know. And right at the top of that list was Joely Richardson, but we never
Okay.
really thought that she would be someone that we could get for such a small British film. And you know, and credit to Matthias, because you know, two or three times we reached out to Joely, and I think two or three times, you know, her schedule wouldn't have aligned or whatever else. But also, you know, and I've said this
Mm,
in other interviews, but the reality is for her to come and make a film like this is a massive, massive gamble for her, you
mm,
know, because she's a, you know, she's somebody who doesn't need to come and make a tiny little British film that if it doesn't work out, you know, it could be egg on her face, you know. So her to come in and trust us, and then to give the performance that she does, and outside of the performance, just to be the person that she was
yep.
on the set, you know, really, really was inspiring. And you know, you couldn't have asked for any more from somebody. Um, so we were really lucky to have her, and to have had her come, you know, to sort of agree to do the project. And then this is one of these things I'm sure people say, and it's usually bullshit, but honest to God, Sadie Soverall was the first person that was cast in the film because
Sadie
we,
is so good, Neil.
yeah, yeah,
I've never
she's
heard of her
amazing.
or seen her until this movie, but
Yeah.
she's destined for stardom.
Yeah, well, she was in just to be clear, like, you know, when we got the first round of casting tapes in for Maisie, you know, there were, you know, we had some interesting reads and things, but she just stood out from the very first tapes, head and shoulders. I mean, because I was looking through Matthias had shared the link on, I was looking through the tapes, and I remember
Yeah.
I come across her tape and I just called him and went, that's it, isn't it? Like, because we thought Maisie was going to be the hardest role to cast because ultimately you're looking for sort of somebody who's 18 to 20 who can play 16 and a
Yeah.
16-year-old that really acts like a 14-year-old, and we're like, this is going to be so this is going to take like rounds and rounds and rounds of casting. And in the first like 6 tapes that came in with Sadie, I was like, that's her, right? And I was like, she's amazing. And he was like, yeah, I mean, I think we should probably see some more people just because it'd be great. I was like, I don't think you need to, and she had come off of a Netflix TV series called The Winx Saga in the UK. I think they'd done 2 seasons of that. But then
Right.
since our film, she's in Saltburn, the new Emerald Fennell film.
Yeah, I
She's
saw
just
that
shot
the other day.
she's just
Yeah.
shot something with Nicolas Cage. She's in a TV. She's currently shooting a TV series in the UK. She's unquestionably going to go on and do some big things.
Mm.
And again, it's like, people always say these things, but you can't make a film like ours without people who sort of going above and beyond.
Of course.
Like there's that saying that you have, which, like, no one cares about your film as much as you do. And I think that's true. So if you can surround yourself with as many people that do care,
Yeah.
you're going to have a better film. And we were lucky because both Sadie and then also Harry Cadby, who plays Matty,
Yeah.
were two young actors that were really at the beginnings of their career. And then both since our film have gone on to do some really great things. Like Harry's the lead in a Netflix TV series at the moment, which is getting rave reviews over here, and he's like the co-main lead of the film of the
Oh,
show.
go
Sorry.
Harry. That's good to hear.
Yeah, yeah, he's doing great, and they both just came in, and they were just great, just great people. We were really lucky, but yeah, I agree. I think Sadie and Joely are both awesome in the film, and they're the heart of it, really, aren't they?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, you are too, though, and I see you as a really nice bloke getting to know you.
Yeah,
And you're not really in the movie, and that takes a lot of really good drawing of other emotions from inside you.
right.
I know you wrote it, but
Yeah,
how
yeah,
did you play that character that wasn't that nice to begin with, and but then he sort of turns around a little bit. I don't want to give too much away.
yeah, yeah. Well, do you know what? I think it's important to when you're writing characters, it's important to sort of keep in mind that nobody in real life thinks they're the bad guy. We can all justify what we do and why we
Yeah,
do it.
quite right.
And I think that also when I was putting the first pass of the story outline together, Jack was coming across quite vanilla, quite a sort of
Okay.
a just easy go, like he's easy to like kind of thing. And a friend of mine, actually not Matthias, it was another friend of mine, another director that I'd asked, what do you think of this? He just sort of said, look, this guy is boring. Like why the audience going to care about him? Don't be afraid to let him go to another place, and then pull him back from there. And it was really the sort of encouragement I needed because I think that what hopefully makes the film work is that at any point in the film you can be looking at the characters and want somebody else to sort of win, if you like. Your
Mm,
allegiances to them will change because no, it's not black and white. The antagonist and the protagonist kind of blend and mix and flip a bunch of times throughout the film. And I'm hopeful that you you like all of them enough at one point to kind of be satisfied with the or kind of want, or like them all enough that you want some sort of positive outcome to come for all of them, as
yeah.
weird as that might be. And I think if you don't like Jack by the end of the film, or don't have at least some empathy for him, then the film hasn't really worked for you. So for
True.
me, I think what was important was to look at the humanity of him. And here's someone that has basically been forced to raise somebody, his brother. He's been responsible for him since he was probably about 10 years old, and is not equipped to deal with it, and it was never given the
Yeah.
support himself to be able to do that. And so he's kind of dragged him up, and he uses Matty as an excuse for all of his failures and all of his shortcomings. And I think that he needs Matty as much as Matty needs him. But there is love in there. This is not this is not an entirely bad
Not
person. And I think,
entirely, no.
yeah, and I think there are moments of lightness in there. The way that there is tenderness with Matty at times, and I think that sort of stuff. I mean, I was a new parent at the time that we made the film, or that I wrote the film, sorry. So it's very easy for me to find that sort of the paternal instincts in there, but also
Okay.
the frustration at times of being like, you know, um, um, of dealing with tiredness and
Yeah.
somebody who's not a baby, in my instance, in my situation, a baby that can't,
Yeah.
you can't reason with, or something like that. So it's obviously it's not the same thing, but if you ask me where can you draw some inspiration from that performance, it's not a massive leap to understand what it must be like to talk to somebody who
Mm.
doesn't comprehend what you're saying and is just sort of shouting at you.
I
but
get it.
but yeah, I think I just, you know, there was also a lot of frustration in there from having spent a career where, maybe, I don't know, maybe there's a slight chip on my shoulder creatively of having felt that like I didn't get some of the opportunities that I felt maybe I should have had or wanted to have. And there are scenes where, that sort of frustration of maybe unrealized potential would come out. And I think that's a lot of who Jack think a lot of what drives Jack is a sense of unrealized potential.
Yeah.
And looking to channel that or blame that somewhere.
Yeah, he's an interesting, complex character and obviously a huge part of the puzzle. Does
Yeah.
acting or writing come first for you? Is there a balance? Well, there has to be a balance, but do you have a preference?
Yeah. I think I think for me, it's about the project itself. I could very happily write on something for a project that I'm not going to be in.
Yeah.
That like there's a couple of things that I'm working on at the moment that there's just nothing in there for me.
Right.
Or if there is, it would be something much smaller. But then at the
Yeah,
same
you got to
time,
write yourself a cameo or something.
yeah. I mean, when you have control, when you have the power to, but then there's other stuff where it's really nice to go in as an actor. And after Little Bone Lodge, I did two other movies where it's somebody else's script. I have
Mm.
no other involvement in it other than I go in, I shoot my part, and that's it. And that's really quite nice as well. I think as long as the project and the material is interesting, then I don't mind. You know,
Okay. That's a
yeah,
that's a pretty common answer for
yeah,
actors, directors who write or actors who write and direct. That is a
yeah,
common answer. It depends on the project and definitely makes
yeah,
sense. And
yeah,
you were going to come down under for a project, but
yeah.
that didn't materialize. Do you think that might happen again in the future? Will you essentially look for something else overseas, maybe breaking out?
Well, I'd absolutely love to. I'd really love to. I mean, I know that project is not completely gone, and I
Mm,
know I've sort of I was meant to be there from late August until end of the year, maybe early January. So
mm,
we were looking at relocating my whole family there, getting my kids in school and and
yep,
and stuff. But we could be there for that, but inevitably with what's happened in the States, a lot of projects have been kind of put on hold or
sure,
cancelled, and
yeah,
this seems to be one of them. So as it stands at the minute, it's not happening. If it comes back, then we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But I know that the director he is Australian. He's back in Australia at the minute trying to get it up and running on its feet. So we'll see.
Well, there's a
It'll
lot
be
of
good.
funding and a lot of projects that are
Yeah,
they're either picking up again or starting. So you never know your
yeah,
luck.
yeah,
And if not that one,
yeah,
maybe something else.
yeah. No, I'd love it. I mean, some of my favorite films genuinely are
Yeah,
have come out of Australia. I mean, like the David Michaud films. Like I remember seeing. I mean, it might actually be you might see shades of it in Little Bone Lodge. I remember seeing The Rover and just thinking like,
yeah,
what an incredible piece of work that is. Just a really beautiful film with two sort of incredible performances. And I know that when I was writing Little Bone Lodge, that sort of sense of
okay,
the God his character and Robert Pattinson's character probably wasn't a million miles away from what was in my head in terms of a dynamic between Jack and Matty. Um, and
yeah, no.
yeah,
Having spoken to Robert about that role, I mean, it was
yeah,
something different for him, and yeah,
yeah,
it stood out, and I liked him in it. And you're right. Now I'm thinking about it. There's a few distant, but a few shades of the Rover in Little Bone Lodge or Last
yeah,
Exit. I better
yeah,
say the
yeah,
right
exactly.
title, Down Under.
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
Yeah,
in the
that's all right.
last decade.
And just before we wrap up, I'd like to know a little bit about your heritage. You know, you were born in the UK, and why are you an actor, writer? Why are you in the creative arts? Was that something that was always going to happen?
Um, no, not at all. I mean, so my background's or my heritage is um my my dad's side of the family are Chinese, so my
Yep.
surname is the
Okay.
sort of pronunciation of my original surname, which was Lutbol, and
Okay.
now it's Linpow.
Yeah.
My mother's side of the family was all Irish, so I'm sort of Irish Chinese, born and raised
Yep.
in England. Originally, like no one in my family has a background in or any history in entertainment. I mean, my brother and I
Wow.
both played.
Okay.
Yeah, no, nothing. So my brother and I both played football or soccer growing up, and we both had careers in football that ended early. He went out and actually sort of had a bit of a career in the States,
Yep.
and came back to the UK, whereas my football career was pretty much sort of dead on its knees by the time I was in my early 20s.
Sure.
And I think the thing with playing football is you've dedicated so much of your life to it that you don't have anything else. You don't know what else you like. So, I didn't do anything else other than play football. So, you get to sort of 22, 23, and you spent your whole life, people would always sort of say to you, like, how's the football going? No one ever sort of says, how are you? Yeah, it's like, how's
No.
the football going?
Yeah.
When you don't have that anymore, it's like you sort of lose a sense of your identity of who you are and what you like. And I had 1,001 things that I thought, well, I want to do this. I want to be an astronaut. I want to go and join the army, or I want to be a doctor. I want to do this. I just realized that I couldn't do all of those things. But
Mm.
the only other thing that I had always been fascinated of, my brother and I just grew up being massive cinephiles. It was either football and movies, and that was it. And I loved movies, and I loved being transported into them and the characters. And I thought, well, if I can't be all of these things in real life, well, maybe I can be all of these things for a hot minute.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, and what I love about acting is that you can absorb or you can throw yourself so deep into a world. So,
Yeah.
you never get you're barely going to scratch at the surface. But if you
Yeah.
if you're going to play a doctor, you really can spend as much as you physically can the time in learning about that job, about that lifestyle, and you can really get granular with it, and then you can experience the smaller scale of what that life might be like for the duration of the project, and then you can move on and do something else. And for somebody with a brain that moves like that, like me, then it's quite a nice thing to be able to do.
Nah, well done. And I mean, football for me was me playing rugby league or rugby
Yeah,
union.
yeah.
So that I played a lot of rugby. And to finish the interview, England are in the World Cup final of the rugby at the moment. How do you reckon they'll go?
Oh, honestly, I'm going to embarrass myself here because I don't really watch rugby. I mean, I will wish them all the best. Haven't they just played South Africa? Has
They
that
just
just
played South
happened?
Africa and lost. Yeah.
Yeah. But how are they still in the final then? How's that work?
Oh, no, you're right. They just got knocked out of the final.
Yeah, okay, there you go. um,
They
because I
should
was
have
going to
won
say,
though. They just lost towards the end.
oh right,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
Well, I wish them all the best in the next tournament. I think the football team are going to do well. I mean, we played Italy the other night and we looked really, really good.
Yeah.
We played
The
Australia as
cricket
well,
team
actually.
is still in the cricket English cricket team is still in the World Cup for the limited over
I've never
World
never
Cup.
watched a game of cricket in my life. It's just not for me.
Oh, there
But
you
I
go.
like I like football and boxing. They're my
Okay.
sports. But a couple of great boxers in Australia at the minute. You got Tim Zoo and
Tim Zoo. Yeah,
yeah, he had a good fight the other night, didn't he?
he
And
did. Yeah.
is Jai Opataya? Is he Australian or is he from New Zealand?
I think
He's the cruiserweight
yeah,
champion.
I think his heritage is New Zealand, but
Yeah,
he's
he's
here
great.
quite a lot. I do like my boxing, but if it comes to sport, it's usually rugby league, rugby
Yeah,
union,
yeah,
and tennis. That's my other thing. Surfing,
yeah,
bit of
yeah,
the
yeah.
beach.
Who was the big tennis player? The blonde guy who back in the day. He was really good.
Pat
Um,
Cash, maybe.
Later than him.
Oh, okay.
Can't remember.
Leighton Hewitt.
That's the guy. Yeah,
Leighton Hewitt.
yeah. That's
There
that
you
was
go. You're
my
stretching.
era of watching tennis. Showing my
Uh,
age now. But
well, I just screwed up on the World Cup of rugby, so now you're stretching my memory with tennis players. Thanks for that.
No, no.
To wrap it all up,
Yeah,
why should people watch your movie? There's so much to choose from. I like asking this question from
yeah, it's a
filmmakers.
good question.
Why should people watch and choose your film?
Okay. It's a really good question. I think if you like films that will have you sort of on your toes, thinking about where it's going to go, and even if it goes in directions that you think it's going to go in, seeing how characters are going to react that aren't necessarily going to be the way that they might traditionally react. If you like films that are small and contained, that are about performances and character, I think that this is a really good example of a very, very small film which is larger than the sum of its parts. And from a personal perspective, this is a film that was made. I wrote this as a vehicle for me, and it could have been very easy
Right.
for this to have been taken away from me. And for the studio or the producers to want to push for somebody with a bigger profile to come in and play that part. So it was a really, Matthias and I kind of we stuck to our guns. We were going to make this film together, and we made the film for very little money, and it was a real labor of love and a belief in each other that we could get this done properly. And I think it's a little bit like you can't compare it to Rocky because that won Oscars, but like it's a little. I think it's an underdog story. A couple of people went out and they made a film that probably shouldn't have been able to get made, and
Yeah.
we've managed to all around the world, and hopefully people will like it.
Yeah, and I'll finish that answer. It's an indie, it's small, it's memorable with some solid performances, and it punches you. It punches you right
Yeah,
in the gut. And it's a bloody good movie. Bloody being the operative word
yeah,
in
yeah,
two
yeah.
ways.
Oh, thank you, Shane. I really appreciate it. And just, again, thanks for your time and for talking about the film and being a champion and a supporter of it. I really appreciate it.
Nate.